Hi everyone, welcome back to another live stream. My name is Abdul Chauhan. I'm the Vice President of Learning at Shobi. For those of you that don't know, Shobi is a feedback and a learning tool that has some really amazing and innovative features used by about 3 million teachers around the world. And today, I'm really pleased that we have Christina Shailas with us joining us, and we're going to be exploring all things learning, all things technology. And I'm really kind of pleased that Christina is able to join us today. Christina, welcome to Showbiz live stream.
Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited as well, Abdul. So let's get this going.
Yeah. So let's just start off because I've been speaking to you for quite a while now. I've met with people from your school as well, and so on. And I know you guys are doing some pretty fantastic things. So let's kind of start off a little bit before we get into your school. Let's talk about Christina. What's your background? Where did you come from? You know, your subjects, your kind of passion. How did you end up where you are? So tell us that.
Yeah. All right. So, that's a lot. Essentially, well, first of all, I'm born and raised in New York. I'm very proud of that as well. And I started my career in public school as a math teacher. And I pivoted into the independent school system in Manhattan. And there was, it's crazy, it's almost 10 years ago now. There was this position at the time, and it was half math and half technology integration. And I remember going, I didn't have let's say, a background in technical skills myself. My major was mathematics. I was training to become a math teacher. But my dad is, he's in programming and things like that. And so I had the background, I had the know-how, let's say. So I remember going, this is it. Like, I love tech. I'm very big on it. This is my time to figure out where it fits into education. So I took the job, kind of not knowing, where this was going to go. And it was the best path I took, to be quite honest. It was so exciting to be able to kind of in the early stages. And I feel like about 10 years ago, it was really like all the tech was kind of heavily coming into schools, especially like well-funded schools. In my first couple of years, like Google Classroom did a beta. I remember getting really excited about that. So, there was a lot coming out, and it was incredible. So I was in the Manhattan school, an incredible school for like 5-6 years. And we explored different ways of yeah, tell me.
Just on that, Christina, sorry, I've just interrupted you there. But what did technology look like in that school at that time, right?
Yeah, I would actually say it was quite advanced. And now looking, back, maybe a lot has changed, obviously, especially from the COVID experience that we had that really kicked us up in tech in the schools. But, it was really about like projector, the projector in the room, and the teachers using the facilities. And, we all know those clunky markers that weren't quite working, and we were trying to make it work for ourselves. So it was about that. It wasn't exactly yet teachers having like I would say the Shobi experience that we have now, where there's like a proper learning management system that works for the teachers, that's flexible. I think a lot of them, not all, required a lot of customization, which required like a tech team to be like really on it about customizing how it looks. It wasn't so easy. And then training the teachers how to use it. I think after that, what I was seeing is that there were a lot of just user-friendly LMSs, right? And teachers were just kind of like accepting it a little more. And I saw that a lot with the platforms that we're using. So anyway, to get back to my, career path, I'm in the school, I'm loving what I'm doing. I'm doing the math teaching and integration, and also finding ways how to integrate it in my subject and other subjects. And I'm loving that I'm finding that technology is the core of all, it's the connector of all these subjects. So I'm like, this is really cool. This is amazing. This is very powerful. And we did incredible things in that school. And we started obviously bringing in robotics and coding and different ways of exploring. All these different 3D printers came into the schools, which was also, again, I was getting thrown into all these different technology elements, but we made it work, and we made it very creative. And then 5 years in, I come to Cyprus, which I'm Cypriot as well, my background. And I get this incredible opportunity to come and join a school in Cyprus. And I'm like, you know what? It's now or never. So I come, and now for the last 3 years, 4 years actually, I've been here. And then, of course, as everyone knows, the whole story with COVID, I was here during COVID, and the story goes from that. It was a quite intense experience for me, especially being away from home during that time.
That must have been. So let's get on to the school. So tell us about your school. What's the name of the school? Give us the context of the school and so on.
So I'm working now at a school called the Heritage Private School. It's located in a city called Limassol in Cyprus. Basically, we have close to, let's say, 1,500 students, and we're all the way from pre-nursery to year 13. We follow, in terms of the structure, it's the English system, the year groups that we're following. I know that we're also considering ourselves an international school, and we continue to do that every year as we grow, because not only of our student body, but we're continually expanding in different kind of curriculums and approaches and things like that. So we're a one-to-one iPad school, and we're very proud of that. It's a long legacy, even before I was here, of their love for Apple products and how the integration with education and Apple. And essentially my role in the school was to figure out, how to, better develop that, what they had in place. As well as my background in innovation, innovation labs. And as you can see, there's a 3D printer behind me. So it was all about how being able to not only facilitate, as I stated before, like the learning management approach from the teachers and train them how to use the tools properly, but find creative, innovative ways to be able to pull tools into the curriculum, whether it was ICT in primary school or in the secondary school, and find ways for students to get engaged in that.
Wow, that's amazing, and it's a great setting as well. So, in terms of your kind of work when you came to the school, obviously one of the biggest kind of challenges that sometimes technology integrators have is to kind of take everybody with you, to build that kind of thing, and that's a significant challenge in any organization, right? So how did you kind of overcome that? How, what kind of things did you put in place? How did you work with your teachers? How did you build that belief, that actually this can support? It's not going to replace teachers, but it can actually enhance and support what happens in the classroom.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I really do consider myself in my position, let's say the middleman, as you say, between IT, which is more technical, and the teachers. And I feel like my role, and a lot of integrationist role, is to speak that common language, because my buy-in as well is I'm still a teacher. So I still teach math, and I have a way to be like, I'm not only showing you the integration, but I'm putting it into my class every day. And I know that, it's working, and I'm trialing it with you. So I think that's extremely important, first of all, for somebody who's in a similar role to me. The second thing is, my motto is really simple. It's if it doesn't make it easier for you, then don't do it, just simply because it's a tech feature, right? And I know a lot of us have this mentality, because when we do approach teachers, there's a scary feeling of like, oh my God, we're coming to, ruin the way the process is, or make it more complicated. No, the point is actually, we don't want to make it more complicated. We want to simplify it for you. We want to give you more time so that you can focus on lesson planning, or whatever it is that the teachers are focusing on. But that's the point. So if it's not alleviating that, there's no point to it. And I think that when you kind of approach it in that way, and they also understand that, I always say, I'm not a techie. I love to say that, because that feeling is like, okay, now let's communicate here. I'm like, I'm just like you. I'm learning as I go. Sometimes I'm a couple of steps ahead, and that's okay. And let's review this together. But I think one of the most important things is the way that professional development for tech integration is done. So we do it in a series of ways. It's very important that our time that we're working together as teachers is practical, and you're giving the teachers time not only to learn whatever it is that you're showing them, but to do with you. Because a lot of the time, and I actually have seen this in one of your other live sessions, and I couldn't agree with him more. I think his name was Tom from EdTech. I can't remember the platform exactly, the name. He said it so right. You have to be able to, have a session running where you're giving the teachers time and you're not sending them off to be like, okay, you learned something, now find your own time to go and do it. It has to be done at that moment. So it's truly important. And once you build, it's a very delicate and a very special relationship to build, and it takes a long time. But once they see that you're on their side, or you're trying to figure it out with them, that's truly important. And then I would also say that when you're testing the integration, especially in the beginning, being in the classroom with them is so important, because if something goes wrong, you're there to catch and say, it's okay. These things happen. They happen to all of us. But I think a series of this is just always kind of being around them, checking in, making sure that, how's it going? Did it work? Let's try this. If it doesn't work for you, and also not implying that there's a box method, and understanding that different subjects may work differently with the integration, and making them truly feel that we have to make it kind of unique for you.
Yeah. And I think that's really kind of quite key. I've seen some really good things happen in schools. I know one school that I visited, they had this thing called One Best Thing. So once a week, teachers just share what worked really well. And it was a great way. And it was literally like 2 minutes. You get 2 minutes just to share what went well. And other people kind of learn from that. It empowers teachers to kind of go and try things. But then they also introduced something called One Best Failure. What didn't work?
Yeah,
Right?
I love those.
It allowed people to actually kind of have that confidence to say, hey, I'll give it a go, and if it doesn't work, then we know that this is not the way, or maybe somebody else will come up with a better way, and so on. So some of these things are kind of they're quite powerful, and I think it's interesting that transparency is there, and I think technology to a certain extent can kind of provide that.
And if I can just speak to that too, and I think I felt this firsthand in my role as taking on a new challenge when I was doing the tech integration, that I was only a lot of the times a few steps ahead, especially when it came to the students introducing new platforms or new methods or approaches. And to get into that comfort zone also reminds us as teachers that we're facilitators. That's our role. Our role is not to know everything. And it's nice to be reminded of that. And I think the tech does that, because it throws us off a little bit, because we don't know everything, and it reminds us that that our point is not to know everything. Our point is to guide and facilitate.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how have the students taken to the environment, right? Because it's a one-to-one environment. What does that look like for the students? How do they feel? Do you hear things from parents, families, and so on as well? What's that environment like?
Yeah, I think I think that the most obvious, and I know that this has been kind of a global thing that's been happening, a lot of schools that I've been speaking to as well from back home, and in Cyprus too, in Europe. I think COVID obviously escalated the situation that beyond our expectations, and that they're feeling that maybe they're on tech a lot, right? So that was like a more obvious from the recent pandemic. But I think overall, I mean, we're all facing these challenges together. One thing is that I think students really do appreciate the organization and the flexibility that this offers them. I mean, the fact that they can take a device wherever they are, they always have their notes in there. No more excuses of my dog ate my homework. It cannot happen anymore, right? So this flexibility has been really positive. But I think just to that point, I think we also, as educators and schools and parents and all of us, I think we also expect, because we consider them like generation tech, to like adapt to it. And I think that we also have to give them time to adapt to it as well. It is a new transition. It's a new way of learning. Maybe they were doing it at home with gaming or whatever, or that's the way they communicate amongst their peers. But when it comes to learning, it is a little bit different, and we do have to kind of balance and make sure that we're not overloading them and we're doing it for the right reasons. You know, I also watched another live session of yours, and one individual had said, you know, it's a tool, and we have to figure out when the right time is to use that tool, and it's not all the time. So I think that's also important as well. I think to close on that, though, the most important thing, as you know, we learn at our school and previous schools, is that trilogy connection of the parent, teacher, and the school. The parent, teacher, school, teacher, parent, and student. That needs to be full communication, very, very strong relationship, or else we're going to struggle with this balance. Yeah.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. So, kind of just moving along. Obviously, you're a Shobi school. You guys have been using Shobi for a long time as well.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. Why Shobi? You know, that's kind of always interesting for me to hear. Why different schools have different reasons, but I'd love to know, like, you know, what made you go down that route, you know, and then, you know, maybe even kind of share, you know, how is it being used? What does it allow you to do now that you couldn't do before, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think, well, in the beginning, when we were exploring different options, we were looking for something that just basically did more for us. I mean, we were exploring different LMSs, and essentially we came across Shobi. It was a good fit for us because of the, you know, the one-to-one iPad relationship that we had. And we had tested it for about a year internally, a small group of kind of a testing environment, and realized, okay, this is good. This worked for us. But, you know, you never really know what it's going to look like until you kind of expand it on a school level. So we had done it obviously in a series of expansions. But it's important for us, you know, that to note that when you're in a place, and I learned this very well in my experience at the school, when you're always looking ahead to find something that fits you and is better than what you have, and your vision is forward, you know, you're always going to put yourself in a very advantaged place. And that happened to us, again, to bring up the COVID situation, because it took us about a day to roll out, you know, and that day we just kind of needed to kind of figure out, okay, what is happening in the world right now? But we were already set up. And why were we set up? We were set up because we were always envisioning the future, the ahead. And Shobi allowed that for us. It was an incredible thing. Shobi and a lot of, you know, some other platforms that we were using made the process just streamless for us, almost to the point that we were like looking around going, are we supposed to be facing challenges right now? You know, it was a crazy thing. And I think that is a very important thing for everyone to kind of get on pace. If you are looking forward, you will never put yourself in a disadvantage. There's always going to be challenges, but again, you're going to be kind of in a good place with whatever comes to your way. So that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. Certainly, schools that were prepared, that have had like a one-to-one program, were easily, well, like it was easier for them to be able to be kind of ready for that kind of environment. I know in certain countries, even now when the Omicron stuff happened, suddenly there were shutdowns and so on. And again, schools that were kind of prepared for that one-to-one kind of environment, they were they were in a better position to make sure that learning continued. And beyond that, you know, that like you mentioned, you know, the trilogy or the triumvirate between the parent, teacher, and student becomes actually quite a powerful thing to be able to do. One of the things that I'm certainly finding quite powerful is when teachers are kind of, you know, teaching new concepts and new ideas, right? So here's a new concept, here's a new idea. Normally the teachers are kind of writing on the board or, you know, doing that. Technology now allows you to kind of capture that. So they can still write on a screen, it appears on the board, but actually their voice, their audio, the whole thing is being recorded. And then being able to share that on the likes of Shobi so that the parents can see it and actually hear the teacher explanation, puts parents in a better position to support their children. So that transparency is something that technology is definitely allowing, and
Mhm.
it's changing the scape. And I know of schools that have kind of, beginning to move in that direction, because even though students are with us in schools for so many hours, as far as the learning time face to face with teachers is concerned, they
Mhm.
still have more time with their parents at home. And if we empower parents to be able to kind of have that transparency around learning, they're certainly going to be in a better position to support their children. And I think,
Right.
like, iPad Shobi is a great combination. It kind of, that whole screen recording functionality on iPad and the
Mhm.
ability to upload straight onto Shobi kind of makes that really kind of quite powerful.
Yeah. And at the moment as well, I think it's super important that when parents are in tuned, it's not after the fact, that when the damage has been done. And then
Yeah,
that's the point, is that they're able to follow along, essentially what's happening in the classroom, right? So it's
yeah,
it's it's an important tool. I think going back to Abdul, what you had stated about schools and whether they were ready, and some were more ready than others. I think it's also important to state that obviously there were schools that were trying to figure out what platform was right for them, so that was maybe putting a further delay onto kind of starting. And I think for the most part, our experience has been that a lot of schools were pushed to take the challenge, and they're in a better, let's say, place technologically because of that push. But I think the schools, one thing that with our school, and I know a lot of other schools that had the systems in place, we were really able to kind of focus on the learning. And that was
yeah,
really important. We were able to say, okay, we have the space now, we have the way to do it. Let's see, like, how is it when the student is at home and we don't see them from a long period of time? What is it that needs to be in place? And that's where my role evolved, because I was really thinking about, oh my God, this student isn't with us for a series. How do we keep them engaged? How do we keep them feeling like we're right next to them, cheering them on? So that also became a challenge, even for schools they had it set up. Didn't matter where you were, you had something to work on.
yeah, yeah. I can definitely see that. I think the other thing, and I've been speaking to schools about this as well, is that one of the things that I think what COVID definitely did was bring a lot of educators and schools into using technology, whether they liked it or they didn't, because it was the only way
Yeah,
of making things work.
yeah.
But then after that, what I've seen is this kind of difference between translation and transformation. And what I mean by that is
Mm-hmm.
that some schools have kind of gone down the route of just translating. So they had worksheets and they had documents, and it's the same stuff that's sent to the students, and the students just complete that on screen. Whereas before they might have been using pen and paper and so on. So, and it's not gone much more beyond that. So that's
Mm-hmm.
just doing what we were doing before with maybe a few additional tweaks. But other schools, and this is like when I spoke with your team at your school, it's that transformation part that was actually quite powerful, where we're now
Mm-hmm.
saying, oh, we now have new tools that allow us to do things that we couldn't do before. So, schools that are beginning to use digitized verbal feedback, schools that are kind of using annotations, and the way in which they give annotations become massively powerful. Schools that are able to, like I said early on, being able to make that classroom learning transparent to parents, so that they can be part of the
Yeah.
day-to-day conversation learning with their children. And simple things. It doesn't have to be massively complicated, but just doing that simple thing means that students can access that video, can listen to that, the teacher explanation. And there's a lot of cognitive science stuff out there which talks about memory, and learning means actually repetition. You need to listen to that again, you need to watch that again. So having access
Yeah.
to that suddenly begins to transform things. So a lot of my conversation at the moment with organizations in the UK and internationally, I'm asking that question, that as a reflective piece, look at your school and look at the practices in the classroom. And are you seeing this as do you have a translation kind of approach, or are you
Mm-hmm.
looking at doing transformation, right? And that's really quite key, because the two things are very different. And yeah, it's fine, you
Yeah.
might be translating right now with a view to transforming and putting
That's
steps
right.
in place. It's a journey. right? But it's about not standing still, and it's about making the most of new tools that are definitely out
Yeah.
there and that do some amazing things.
No, and I think it's important the way you said it is that when you're starting, it's okay to be in that translation
Yeah,
phase. But once you get to
absolutely.
a pace that you're comfortable, that's when you start working on it. And I think that for a lot of schools, again, that were set up, that's what they were working on is the transformation phase. And that was incredibly powerful for me that I always loved tech in education, but I couldn't believe what was evolving and what we can do. I mean, from differentiated learning and Shobi has that aspect that you're able to, show and hide certain comments or videos with such ease without even having to plan or think about it, is so important. And then the other aspect of collaboration between educators and why you have
Yeah.
to constantly reinvent. I mean, if somebody creates a great video, being able to share it to another teacher to use in his or her class, and that it was just done in such a way that it was beyond user friendly, and
Yeah.
it was extremely helpful for teachers, students, and parents alike.
Yeah, and I think that is any good technology has these two key ingredients built in: simplicity and reliability. It
Yeah,
has to be
yeah,
simple. I remember the days when technology was super complicated, and you had like a technology superhero in the school that would come and save the day because things were just
yeah.
like really difficult. I even remember when interactive whiteboards first came out, and you had to calibrate them with those
Oh
pens that
God.
you mentioned earlier and so on, and is the sound connected to the projector or is it connected to the board and all of that. But we now live in a world where young children, very old people, everybody can use technology, and I think that
Mhm.
simplicity element is really quite key, and I think schools should not be any different. That approach should certainly be first and foremost as when you're considering the type of technology that is being used. And I do know certainly the engineers at Shobi, really kind of look at that simplicity element. It's got to be super simple and
Mhm.
really easy for people to use and so on. And the other aspect that you mentioned was that that teacher transparency and teacher collaboration, the fact that you can add multiple teachers into classes, put them into groups and so on. That's actually really quite powerful. I was at a school in Dubai where one of the teachers was using that feature to do moderation, right?
Mhm.
So teachers would submit their pieces of work, and each teacher could moderate that. And what was really fascinating was that the amount of time that they saved, because in the past they would be taking days off, bringing everybody together and all that kind of stuff and so on, and actually sitting around a table and going through books and so on. So from that
Yeah.
perspective, it's been significantly more powerful, and I think that's what good technology does. It saves you time, it can save you money, and it kind of empowers people to do things that are really quite
Yeah.
transformational.
And if I can add to that, I think that, Shobi does an incredible job at making it very intentional. And I think that a lot of the things that you guys release in terms of articles and videos, sometimes, yeah, the tools are there, but knowing how to put the tools together to be able to do it is really important. And you do an incredible job. Like we've benefited so much from that as teachers of how to use those tools to benefit the teaching and learning.
Yeah.
So kudos to you guys for that. And
Thank you.
you've been
Thank
a
you very
great
much.
support
And
for
you
us.
know what? You actually just reminded me of something. Just I think yesterday they released a new feature called assignment sharing.
Yep,
So now
that's right.
you can actually share your assignment. Hey, you got an amazing
Yeah,
assignment and activities that you put together with the resources. You can actually share that with another teacher. That's
yeah,
really kind of powerful. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how schools use that. Christina,
yeah,
as these live streams go, it's kind of like 30 minutes gone.
that's right.
It's like super. Um, it's always kind of fascinating speaking to you, and absolutely love the fact that um, you're using Shobi and using technology in this way as well. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be at Bet, and I know Christina is going to be at Bet as well.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
but absolutely, if viewers are watching, you can come and see us. The banner's right there at the bottom, NG53, NG45. You can come and experience Shobi, speak to people, speak to other educators that we've got coming there as well. So wonderful to kind of meet you all there as well. But Christina, once again, thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights with us. It's really, really appreciated.
Thank you so much, Abdul, for having me. Have a good one.
Thank you.